I know. Good morning. If we could all gather for the forum, that would be wonderful. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Most people here know me, but I'm Hallie Payton, Senior Warden of Grace St. Luke's. I'm so pleased to welcome back the Reverend Dr. Rob Dewey. He was here back in 1984 and was not confirmed a priest. What is ordained as a priest? Thank you. It took me a minute. And he also worked with our youth. And he had a great lunch yesterday. About 6 or 8 of them showed up at Huey's to meet with him and reminisce. So that's really fun. But I have known Rob's family and my family have known each other for probably 70 years. So long history there, but Rob has done a lot of interesting things since he left Grace St. Luke's, and we are just so glad to have him back, and I'm going to let him tell y'all a little bit about his journey. Thanks so much.
All right, I'm going to watch the clock because I know how Episcopalians are. Out the door at 10:15 or something. But it's good to be here. And Father Ollie asked me to talk about one aspect of my ministry, which was made international news with reference to an AME church. And so this happened in 2015 when that I'm going to share about. But to get in that position of being the chaplain I was the chaplain for the police in Charleston and also the EMS and fire departments and the coroner, the medical examiner, and FBI. Internationally, I was the head FBI chaplain in 2015 for the country. And so, I saw a lot of yucky stuff. But as I tell people, it's better than a vestry meeting. So, doing youth ministry here at this church prepared me for homicides, and some of your children were in my group. And so I started this ministry, nonprofit, in 1990, and I'd gotten tired of not this church, but the Episcopal Church as a whole, because I saw so much time being wasted on what color we're going to paint the bathroom. And, Jesus doesn't give a rip. Just paint it. And so I got tired of those kind of things and conventions and stuff. So I'm still an Episcopal priest. I've been ordained 42 years. And I started here and at Calvary. Ordained deacon there, came here for 2 years, a little over 2 years. But in Charleston, I started this ministry that was pretty weird. It was pretty out there, but God put it on my heart. And so became the chaplain, and if you can imagine, your son Brian riding with me in an unmarked police car. They gave me an unmarked police car for 30 years. So they really didn't know what they were doing. But many times I needed that, and I can tell you many stories where I end up with families, individuals who were in crisis. But the one that just gives you a little background. We were on call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. My wife, Kathy, who's here, we were married in 2001, and back then, everybody lives together, it seems like now. We did not live together. I'm here to share that. So when we got back from our honeymoon, my pager went off 5 times between midnight and 4 in the morning. And she started crying because she didn't know what she'd gotten into. She still doesn't. I'm still the chaplain for the federal drug court and the state drug courts, Isle of Palms Police, and Charleston Food and Bev Association. So I'm still doing some things, but after this event that I'm going to share with you, the Emmanuel murders is what I call it. It totally changed my life, and I end up with PTSD and a depression, and so I left the group I started, and I left them in pretty good shape. We were a nonprofit, so we were trying to collect money, and when I left there in 2016, 2017, we were given 3 unmarked police cars from different departments. We were chaplains for 40 agencies, and we had a budget of the money that I was raising of $525,000 a year. And a couple of you all in here have dedicated on a regular basis, and I appreciate that. I won't call you out, though, but I appreciate that. So let's get to the June 18th event. June 18th, 2007, we had a white supremacist come in to an AME church. AME stands for African Methodist Episcopal Church. AME churches were started around the Civil War time, and they got very strong after the Civil War. It was a place for the free slaves to go and to worship, instead of going with the white masters and going to the big churches where they were forced to sit in the balconies in our downtown churches. They started their own churches. And this church, particular church, it's called Mother. The nickname is Mother Emmanuel because it's the mother church, just like Calvary is, of all the churches in that area, of all the black churches, Mother Emmanuel. So we were, I'll stop right there and go back to June 17th, 2005. So here we are, June 17th, 2005. And we had there was a sofa superstore and fire. And they called me at 7:15 one night. I knew going over the bridge that it looked bad. It looked like a bad fire. I didn't know what we were going into. I'll make this part short. But we had 9 firefighters that died that night. So a friend of mine who was captain of the Highway Patrol, Jim Woods, he called me and said, "Hey, can I do anything for y'all down there?" And I said, "Yeah, I need a trooper for each of the families that have died, so I can send a chaplain with each of the families, to each of the families." So he got me 9 troopers down there, and we were there till the next morning at that fire. And now it is a museum, if you will. It's set apart, just like a cemetery would be, and that is a place of holy ground. So I had just finished with being at 9/11 in 2001 and prayed over a lot of bodies as they were coming out of the towers. And we prayed over each of the bodies as they came out. And so the fire chief said, "Hey, Rob, I want you to come inside the building and pray over all the bodies of my 9 people that died in here." And so I had a suggestion for him. I said, why don't y'all bring them right here to the outside, and then I'll do a quick blessing over them. And so I did that, and I'm glad I waited for it to come outside, because they then came out, OSHA came out with something that everybody that went inside and sucked up those fumes was contaminated. Their lungs were. But then we had 9 funerals. So every year we memorialize what I call the Charleston 9, the 9 firefighters. So I've been so you have that in 2005, June 17th, 2005. Then we come up to June 18th, 2007. And it happens to all of us. Yeah. It's okay. Increase your pledge. Just trying to help. And I know it's pledging time. So I was at home with my wife, Kathy, and thank goodness she's a psychologist. So when we got married, she doesn't charge me to psychoanalyze me. It's all free. Isn't it? Something. Oh, it's been costly in a lot of ways. But so I was at home around 9:15 on Wednesday night. AME Church, this AME Church had a regular Bible study, kind of in their basement, and a white male had been coming to the Bible study some, and he showed up this evening of June 18th, 2007. And at the end, when they asked everybody to bow and pray, he pulls out, I'm not good with guns, I don't like guns, but he pulls out some kind of semi-automatic pistol and began shooting the people that were in the Bible study. One lady crawled under the table and pulled her grandson underneath her body. So he did not get shot. But we had, I was notified in the middle, probably 5 minutes into it. I had probably 10 phone calls from different police chiefs and fire chiefs, EMS director, that we were needed down there. So I had on the way from Mount Pleasant, which is kind of like Germantown is to Memphis, and there's a big bridge over the Cooper River. And so on the way there, I started calling my chaplains, volunteer chaplains. I had about 30 of them that had been trained with me for events. And so this was just, we moved into every, we were ready for it in a way, because we train every month on how to do incident command post. So we knew who would be there and who was supposed to be there. And so when I arrived on scene, I already had 20 chaplains coming towards me en route to back up our ministry. So I got to the scene, I got to the church, had to park a little bit away, but on the way over there, the dispatcher came on the radio and said, all units en route, extreme caution, shooter is still at large. And I'm going, they didn't teach me this in seminary. And so, I figured when it's my time, it's my time. So I got to the scene, and I checked in with the scene commander and asked her what she wanted me to do. And she wanted me to go over to the embassy suites. And that's where it's the old Citadel, if you're familiar with the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina. And that's where they used to have their barracks. So now it's an embassy suite. So the manager of the embassy suites opened up his place for us. And that was the place for the Family Assistance Center. So families could reunite. And they were very kind, gave us their ballroom, gave us 2 rooms so the coroner could notify different families that their loved one had been killed. And so you would hear screaming coming out of the rooms. And, black folks let out their emotions. I wish I could let out my emotions better than I do. But it was quite a scene. We had about 500 people up there in the ballroom. And the mayor gets there around midnight, and he just made it official kind of and said, Rob, you're in charge of this Family Assistance Center. I said, got it, sir. And, we'd practice for that. So we knew what to do. We had, it got better, though, for me when Reverend Goff showed up, and they all knew him as a former pastor of their church. And so when he got there, I pulled him aside and just said, I just want to let you know I have not taken the time to pray with them, so I think it might be good So he got everybody quiet. I couldn't have gotten everybody quiet. He got everybody quiet, and he did a prayer, and then he had everybody hold hands, and everybody sang, "What a friend we have in Jesus, to grief and share." And so that was we all cried. That we knew that we'd lost 9 members of the family. Shooter was still at large. We were up all night. And then within 3 or 4 days, the President of the United States came in to do a service. So we had another service, and I called my friend that was head of Secret Service, and I said, I really don't want to go to this service with the President there. I said, I'm exhausted. And I said, but my idea is that we send 3 of our other chaplains. And he said, great, just have them come report to me. So they were there, and I was at the Department of Social Services because some of their workers had been shot at 2 days before that. So I ended up spending the morning with them on Friday morning. Friday afternoon, we had a bond hearing. They'd caught the shooter up in right outside of Rock Hill, South Carolina. And we were able to get his license plate the police got his license plate from the library that was next door to the church. There was a video camera. The church had no video. That's changed now. A lot of churches now have really great video, and they also have an off-duty police officer. And I think that all of us will probably be having that at some point for safety and worship within our churches. But we had the service, and then we had 9 funerals that I attended. And the last one that I attended, I just said, I want to be there. I want to be a worshiper. They wanted me to come up to the dais and be on the platform. And I said, no, just let me be here. You're talking about one tired puppy, and that was me. But the poor families, and I got to be close with several families. You can't get close with everybody, but got close with several families. And I never have called this the Charleston 9 because I think we saved that for the 9 firefighters. But these 9 people that were murdered, I called the Emmanuel 9. And that's what I was sharing with Ollie when he was talking about me coming over and being able to do this time with you all right now. And we got to check the time. Okay. The 3 rooms, they arrested him. We had the bond hearing was on Friday afternoon at 2:00. The murders happened on Wednesday night. We got the shooter back in custody, got him back into Charleston County, and the families were there at the bond hearing. I was standing on the back wall, and just to be available if they needed me. But a lot of the families stood up and addressed the court, addressed the judge, and the general consensus was, hey, we're angry, we've lost our mama, but we forgive this guy. There was a lot of forgiveness real quick. And before maybe they'd had the chance to process the murders. But we ended up having 2 trials for the shooter. He was not convicted in state court. It was a hung jury. And in federal court, he was convicted. So he is on death row out in Denver, Colorado, at the federal facility there. One of the things that we did during this period, we thought we might have riots. We were scared. This was before the George Floyd situation. Or was it? I can't remember. I looked it up yesterday, but I can't. So, at any rate, we thought we might have riots. We didn't. But the assistant police chief and I met with a lot of the Black Lives Matters folks who had come. We met with them like at 2 o'clock in the morning at Marion Square, which is right next to the old Citadel. And we met with them. And one of them told me after their third night of protest, they said, "Why are you here?" Because I always wore my clergy collar, and then I always wore a chaplain's vest also. And why do you keep coming? And I could have taken it one or two or three ways. Why are you here? And I said, I'm here because I love y'all. And I'm here because I love the police also. And I want to just be here to try and support both sides. And he says, we're glad you're here. That was pretty cool for me to hear that. And I was blessed to hear that. So that relationship with some of the black activists continued. We did have some riots in Charleston, but not because of this event. And we were going into this event, we had already had, the month before, we'd had 5 officer-involved shootings. We had 2 of our sergeants from Charleston Police Department that committed suicide. And on April the 4th, which was Holy Saturday, we had a police officer that shot and killed an unarmed black suspect. So I went to his federal trial also, and he is now in Denver under federal charges also. They lost that on state charges. So the state needs to look at maybe how they're forming their charges because they lost both these cases. One of the things that was very helpful going into this is having relationships before, if you will, you need them. I mean, my phone is chock full of clergy people, lay leaders, mayors. I may never need them, but I've got them. So that night, I was on the phone with everybody and trying to coordinate what I needed to coordinate to be part of this incident command situation. So, yes, so probably doing junior high ministry helped getting me prepared for this. But it was, everybody did what they were supposed to do. You know, I was at the Family Assistance Center, and we had police up there that were supposed to be guarding who got in, and all the folks that were murdered were African American. And so I saw one guy walk up the stairs, and he was very white, and he walked a little bit in towards where everybody was, and I said, "Can I help you?" He says, "Well, one of my relatives died." I'm thinking, you must be one of the black sheep of the family, because he was white, and everybody that was murdered was black. And I said, "Help me out with that. Who are you related to?" He said, "Well, I'm actually a reporter from the Washington Post." And I said, "Well, you're really not invited to be here." So I got a police officer to escort him downstairs. So we had it pretty well tight, so that way that only the families and those that were of us that were there to help were admitted into that area. So I probably had 10 of my chaplains up there doing what they're supposed to do, what they're trained to do, and caring for folks. But relationships were a key to making this, from our standpoint, successful, if I may say that. And successful in saying that we were there where we were supposed to be, doing what we're supposed to do, to minister in God's name, to pray for people sometimes, but a lot of times folks when they're in such a traumatic situation and say their son has just committed suicide, they don't want a prayer. So that's part of my training with chaplains is you're not always called to do out loud prayers. Just see what God is calling you to do, and pray when usually asked for. But after we've gotten to know somebody pretty well with this ministry that we did, then sometimes they would say something. "Well, are you going to pray for me?" I said, "I've been praying for you silently, but I'd love to pray with you." from that, we established for the community, we called it the Illumination Project, and I was in charge of it for a little while. And it was being able to sit at round tables like this and get African Americans and getting whites to sit down and talk about things that they felt needed to come up. We had set questions for them to do on that particular day. And so that was successful. A book was written on it, and not by me, but a book was written on it. And, with this ministry that I've done for the last 30 years, it really doesn't matter as if you're coming from an Episcopal background, Methodist, Buddhist, Jewish, but if you're there to help the person to get over this crisis that they've just had, then I have never been turned away because my collar, being a Christian. Sometimes I don't wear the collar. I just wear a shirt that says chaplain on it. But two of the times that come back, we had a situation where a woman was stabbed to death 30 times and shot 3 times. Have y'all watched enough Dateline that you know who the suspect's going to be? Bingo, you can have another pancake. So we knew it was a husband, so I get on the scene at 2 o'clock in the morning in one of our historic areas of Charleston. And the sergeant, she says, I want you to meet Reverend Dewey. He's our chaplain. And he said, his immediate response was, I don't need nobody. I'm an atheist. So any ideas what I did?
Pray for him.
Sure I did. But I didn't put my arm around him and pray for him. But I knew in my mind that he was a suspect. And so for me to have the opportunity of being with him, I took off, I had a tab clergy shirt on, took that off and said, I'm here just to be a friend. What can I do to help you? So I never prayed out loud with a man, but I helped get in touch with relatives down in Brazil, her family. And then about 2 hours later, he was taken to the police department and interviewed and then arrested for the murder of his wife. And so I knew how that was. And then he got a good lawyer and got off. Promise you. I kind of watched that from afar. And then we had, talking about being able to go across denominational religious lines, I had a situation where I responded to all I got over the radio, police radio, 2 o'clock in the morning, was to respond to this house, and a 29-year-old male had been found dead, and there was a needle in his arm, and the mother was there. So I got to the scene, and the dispatcher came on the radio and said, chaplain, you can 1022, which means forget it, and that they don't want a chaplain. I said, stand by, I'll give you a call. So I called her on the phone. I said, now, wait a minute. You woke me up. And I said, I'm still going to the scene, and if they don't need me, they don't need me. But you woke me up. So I got to the scene. The Sergeant Wages, who I know real well, she said, hey, chaps, they said that they don't want a chaplain, that they don't get along with their rabbi. And I said, well, tell them I'm not the rabbi. And I said, give them my business card. Because on my card, I had a cross and the Star of David. And because we were a Judeo-Christian ministry. So after about 5 minutes, she comes out and says, she wants to see you. I said, I'm good with that. So I stayed with her for the next 2 hours while we got her other son out of the service. We went through the Red Cross to get him back to Charleston. He was deployed, I think, into Virginia somewhere. And then I waited for her husband to get back from a business trip in Greenville. So I went back there that same day around noon just to check on her. And the mama, the daddy, and the brother were all out in the front yard. And so I went up to them, and she said, I want you to meet my new best friend. So it really doesn't matter your religion, but just stand for God and reach out in God's name. And so I said, at that point, I did say, can I have a prayer with y'all? And we did a huddle prayer. And I didn't end in your name, Jesus, we pray. I ended in your high and holy name we pray. Amen. And hopefully Jesus is okay with that, because I do it at Rotary Club every week. Interesting thing about that is that about 10 years later, this guy comes up to me at the at a deli where I was having a sandwich. As you can tell, I don't miss many meals. So, and we were sitting there having a sandwich. This guy comes up to me and says, "You don't remember me, but you stayed with my wife when my son overdosed until I could get home. I just want to thank you for being there." And then he started crying and walked away. So that's been my ministry for 30 years, doing those type of things. And so, yes, I started here, and I was very blessed to have 2 years with you all in 1983, 84, leaving in 85. And but pretty well set in Charleston now. And I can tell more stories about the Emmanuel shootings, the murders, or other things. I would love questions.
How is that church in Charleston doing these days?
It's still wounded. I mean, part of it was that the FBI and the state police, what we call SLED, State Law Enforcement Division, they came in because there was a lot of rumors and charges against some of the staff at the church for stealing money. And so that led to a lot of pain also. So they are back to regular church services, but a lot of folks will never get over it. Most of the people that had relatives that were there have moved away from Charleston and have gone to other churches.
After this shooting, I've understood that Governor Nikki Haley had the Confederate battle flag removed from the state capitol. They changed the name of Calhoun College. A statue of Calhoun was removed close to Emmanuel Amy. And so I was wondering if responding to these kinds of tragedies by removing symbols associated with white supremacy, how's that been part of the peace process, or helped with healing, or not, from your vantage point?
Well, I think that there is a group that has been helped by certainly the Confederate flag being removed from the top of the state capitol. Okay, so it is now in a museum. And then they have taken down several statues. They haven't changed Calhoun Street's name yet. They did take down the Calhoun statue. They're supposed to place it back somewhere. Don't know where, but I think that it has helped a group of people in a healing process to show that there is sensitivity there. Does that help? Does that? Yes, ma'am.
How have you dealt with your own trauma process?
Who says I have? No, that's a good question. I used to play a lot of racquetball. When I was here, I played a lot of tennis. And that's my nephew, isn't it? My nephew. That's her son. Okay, how have I dealt with my own stuff? Some of it is that I have written and co-authored 3 courses through the University of Maryland for their critical incident stress trainings. So I've gotten really deep into the psychological trauma that goes with this type of thing. And for my own grief, we're supposed to do self-care. During this event of the shooting, I did not do a good job of self-care. It really overtook me because I was there. I was on scene. And all the people I'll give you an example, all the people that responded to that police officer that shot the black suspect 8 times in the back, all of us that were there to begin with, all the fire, police, EMS, and yours truly, chaplain, all of us have left the organizations we were with because we did not get good care as far as trying to help us and trying to work with other people, but not us. And it has helped very much. The first half of my ministry time, I was not married, but, having a wife that is helpful and also a psychologist is a blessing. Don't worry, it's on tape. It's a blessing, dear. Okay. Does that work? Okay.
I'm just curious, you were an ordained minister here as a youth minister. What was your journey from this to something completely different in South Carolina?
That's a good question. Yeah, I got to be careful here. I was certainly blessed to be here those 2 years that I was here. And then once I got in South Carolina, I really got frustrated with the church as I've seen the churches. And I know that we've already pledged to our cathedral where I assist. I'm an assisting priest at our cathedral. I'm assisting every week and every Sunday. So I'm still involved, but I don't go to conventions anymore. I don't go to clergy conference because I saw a lot of that as a waste of time, to be honest. As far as no, sir. I left here and went to a church in Birmingham. And then from Birmingham, I went to a 5,000-member church in San Antonio. And then I was ready. I was doing youth ministry there as a priest, but then, doing all the service, but then being out with the kids on Friday nights. It didn't help my dating life at all. And so the joy of, it was time for me to get out of doing youth ministry. I'd done my sentence. And so I got in South Carolina and started doing ride-alongs with the sheriff's office. And I loved, they would come by the church and talk to me, shoot the breeze, getting counseling. And so I went and I got a meeting with my bishop and the police chief and the sheriff. And I said, I have an idea to throw out to y'all. And I said, I want to be y'all's full-time chaplain. I said, I'll raise the money, but you all need to give me your blessing, and I need a car to get to the different scenes. And so my bishop was very smart, and he said, I'm going to make you stay at your current position, church, until you raise the first $50,000, because I don't think he thought I could do it. And I knew it could be done. And so I got that done in about 6 months, and then they gave me a car. And some of the hurdles that I had to go through, because law enforcement had not had a chaplain hanging out before that. And I had one of the captains tell me, point blank, about the second day there, he said, Mr. Dewey, we have had policing here for 250 years, and I don't see that we need you. That was my welcome. And so that was some of the response I got when I started. But then, you just keep loving the people, and you show up. And one of the things that finally convinced this guy, his name is Eddie Whitlock, still alive, and he is totally behind me. I won him over. Is just to hang in there and get beat up some. It's not always easy. But I hung in there, and I remember one Saturday, I was living on Johns Island at the time, still in the rectory of the church, and the dispatcher called and said, hey, we have a death, and they told me where it was. So I didn't have I had my own personal car at that point, but I came up on the radio and asked Whitlock, who's in charge of detectives, I said, would you like for me to respond? And he said, do whatever you want. And, on the radio, that doesn't sound real welcoming. So I went to the scene, and we'd had about an 18-year-old male that stabbed to death his father because he wanted drug money. So I was there, and that was my first major call, and I really didn't know. I didn't learn how to deal with that money in CPE. But I dealt with it, and I saw that it doesn't matter the color of your skin just that you go in God's name. So that's how I got to this. And so then I ended up leaving. I didn't leave the church, but I left that particular church with the bishop's blessing to be able to do this full time. So this has been my full-time job for 32 years. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, thank you.
How unique is your program that you developed? Is that replicated anywhere else?
It's pretty weird. There was one place out in California, in Sacramento, that had a similar type program. So I flew out there for 2 weeks one time just to learn under that chaplain and learn some things. And the plane landed, and he said, "We're going to the morgue." And I said, "What's up?" He said, "Well, we just had 2 children killed this morning by their father." And it turned out, do you remember a baseball coach by the name of McNamara? Can't remember his first name. But he was with Boston or somebody. So it was his grandchildren that were murdered. So we were there to help the grandfather and to do to see the grandchildren. And then we did a community briefing. And I never had seen one of those done before. So it was really good for me because we had, right after that, we had 5 family members killed. And the 6th one was visiting grandmama. So I ended up dealing with that mass casualty, and where we were able to do a funeral for all of them at the Coliseum. But for each one of those events that I'm talking about right there is that we ended up doing a community debriefing where we got everybody together, and I usually use a church, and I had some mental health counselors there, some chaplains that were there, just to go through psychological debriefing, that type of thing, to try and help them. Does that answer your question a little bit? I'm sorry. Yeah, I diverted. Yeah, it's pretty rare. And I see you moving. It's pretty rare, and I've helped a lot of places get started, which is one of my blessings. San Diego, Columbia, Indianapolis. So I have probably taught 200 people, 200 chaplains, on how to do what we've done. That doesn't mean that they need to do the exact same thing, but it means that they've got a basis where they can go and help their community. How about that? Does that work? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Thank y'all.
Rob, we're so glad to have you back.